Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, January the 24th, 2024. Of course, it's not actually Wednesday at the time of this recording. It's actually early on Tuesday, January the 23rd. The reason I have this supposed fiction is because people do watch this video from around the world. Okay, I don't have a huge viewing, but yeah, it's nonetheless true that there are people all around the world that watch this video. And although it might be early on Tuesday morning on the Pacific coast of the United States, it's the evening in Australia. It's nearly Wednesday. So it seems to me reasonable to record this as if it's Wednesday, particularly as I will be talking about what's going on Wednesday. But I think I should mention the fact that it's not Wednesday here, but it's Tuesday, because on Tuesday there's the New Hampshire primary, and in fact, a few results have already come in. I think is it a result from Dixie Notch, but 6 voters, and the 6 voters have said they all going to vote for one of those candidates, Nikki Haley, and so I need to make it clear that the results haven't come in yet, from my perspective, for the New Hampshire primary. And it is expected that Donald Trump is going to win in a major way. Still, I want to look at this. I want to look at the primary from an astrological perspective. I believe it is the Democrats and the Republican primary, but it's really the Republican primary is the only one that really matters. And I think the results actually come out at around 8 o'clock p.m. New Hampshire time. And so, how are those results going to affect Donald Trump? How are they going to affect Nikki Haley? So, that's something I want to look at. Where does Nikki Haley go from here? How does she respond to those results? What's actually happening to her when she starts to see the results? That is one thing I want to look at. But I also want to consider the allegations that have been floating around for some time that Nikki Haley, before she became governor of South Carolina, she was elected in 2010 and became governor of South Carolina in January 2011, that she had extramarital affairs. And I think the Daily Mail has talked about them, and there are apparently affidavits by the men involved have signed, or at least 2 of the men involved have, I believe, signed affidavits confirming that these affairs happened. But Nikki Haley denies it. So we don't really know what's going on. Is it important? I should, make it clear that, of course, Donald Trump has had lots of affairs by all accounts, and no one seems too bothered about that. There's no reason why we should be too bothered about Nikki Haley having affairs. Even if she did, I don't know. Who knows what happened? It happened a long time ago. Clinton, JF Kennedy were allowed to have affairs. Others, so what? If Nikki Haley has affairs, does that really have any impact on her ability to be president? So I'm not looking at this in any attempt to suggest that she's not a suitable candidate to be President of the United States. I think she is I don't think she is a suitable candidate, not because she may or may not have had affairs, but because she is a neocon, she seems to support war in many parts of the world. I think she is dangerous, but that has nothing to do with who she may or may not be having affairs with. So I really want to make that clear. And of course, it's unfair, perhaps, in the world that it seems to be okay for men to have affairs, like Trump in particular, but it may not be okay for her. So I do want to make that clear. Nonetheless, I think it's just interesting, this allegation, because we can perhaps look at what was going on when these affairs were supposed to be happening in her horoscope, and ask ourselves, does the astrology seem to suggest that she might have been having affairs? Does it fit? Now, of course, even if it does fit, that doesn't mean that she was having affairs. I'm just doing this as a sort of maybe as an intellectual exercise. But, just to give you a flavour, here is an affidavit, one of the affidavits involved. So let's just go quickly look at some of the main things about it. So this is from William Randolph Folkes III. And, he says the usual bit. He's over 18. He makes this affidavit of his own personal knowledge, of my own personal knowledge. He's a resident of Richland County, South Carolina. And he says, I was employed by South Carolina Representative Nikki Haley from early 2007 until March of 2008 as a communication consultant. As I have stated publicly, during that time, Representative Haley and I engaged in an inappropriate physical relationship that included numerous instances of inappropriate sexual contact. So he's gone to the lengths of signing an affidavit. I think this was signed in October 2010. So this was signed in the run-up to Nikki Haley's election, but it didn't stop her from being elected governor of South Carolina. And so, from an astrological point of view, I don't know what the crucial dates are, but it says from early 2007 until March of 2008. So I was just thinking, okay, let's just take this early 2007 date. What does that mean? Okay, let's just roughly look at, say, I don't know, April the 1st, 2007. That's just what I want to focus on. I'm not going to look at or try to track down the other affidavit. I just want to focus on this one. And just see what's going on, what was going on for her at the beginning of 2007. And, does this fit? And of course, I can also look at her chart and say, well, is this a chart of someone who might be having affairs? So, yeah, that is something I do want to consider. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, January the 24th, 2024. Of course, yes, I know it's Tuesday where I am right now, but still I'm looking at Wednesday's astrology. So, here we go. Top right, that is Nikki Haley, and here is a chart for Wednesday, January the 4th, 2024, set for New York at noon. Now, I am not suggesting that today is particularly exciting. The moon is still in Cancer. You can see moon is at 22 Cancer. And it's sort of separating from the opposition of Mars, but that opposition Mars happened yesterday on Tuesday. The moon is moving to a trine of Neptune. So with Wednesday's trine between Moon and Neptune, it creates a certain fluidity. It allows our imagination to run free. It may allow our feelings to run free. I mean, the Moon is in Cancer. Cancer is a water sign. So that's kind of nice and sort of pleasant. And I don't know, if it wasn't terrible weather, I would suggest one, might want to take a walk by a river or by the sea, Moon trine Neptune. Keep a safe distance from it. But I don't know, it depends on the weather. It depends on, whether you're north or south of the equator. But Moon trine Neptune is very sensitive. It's very artistic. It has a certain vision, and it's relatively easy to read people's thoughts and feelings with Moon trine Neptune. But we shouldn't necessarily try to do anything too important with the Moon trine Neptune, because there is plenty of scope for getting confused. And at the same time, the Moon is making a sextile to Uranus, so that creates a bit of excitement, sort of emotional excitement. I think we can create change in quite a clever way. So if we don't quite like the way things are, we can stir things up, but in a sort of quite gentle way, not in a way that anyone gets hurt. And so that's how Moon trine Uranus might be working out. Additionally, Mercury is quintile Neptune. So in other words, Mercury is 72 degrees apart from Neptune. So that's a fifth of a circle, 72 degrees. So Mercury quintile Neptune, it says something about the kind of style we want to adopt, because quintiles are about the number 5, and it's what we're trying to create. So, many of us may be trying to deliberately sort of create this web of fantasy and lies and deception around us, disguise. We might be deliberately trying to do this. We might feel we want to lie, at least we might want to distort the truth. Mercury is about how we communicate. Neptune is about sort of confusion, and so we might lie not without meaning to, but actually in quite a sort of deliberate kind of way. We might feel, okay, this is the style we're going to adopt. We're not going to tell the truth. We're going to try and be someone we're not. Let's see how it works. And this might also be reflected in what we wear, what we're trying to. Mercury. I suppose you could say that Mercury quintile Neptune is almost sort of heroin chic, isn't it? That I don't. I know there is that phrase, heroin chic. I suppose gaunt and pale and emaciated and that kind of thing. I mean, I would suggest you avoid heroin chic. But there's that kind of style that people might try to adopt today. So I don't know, look at how other people are behaving, look at how other people are trying to come across. They are not coming across in a particularly straightforward way, and they're almost deliberately confusing matters. As far as midpoints are concerned, the Sun is still conjunct the Venus-Saturn midpoint. Now, the reason this conjunction, Sun on a Venus-Saturn midpoint, has been going on for so long, it's because the Sun and the Venus are both moving. So Sun is still on the Venus-Saturn midpoint. I think some of us are going to try to be quite detached, cold. We might feel we have to be. We might feel it's the right approach. Although we need to realize that the Moon is trine Neptune. we can't be totally detached with Moon in Cancer, trine Neptune in Pisces. Also, Mars is on the Pluto North Node midpoint. I think that that's quite tricky. Reinhold Ebertin talks about the Pluto North Node combination as being about something like the tragic destiny of a large group of people. And so Mars is about how we assert ourselves, and maybe we might be upset by something going on in the world, something tragic. What upsets you when you look at the news? There may be one particular thing that upsets you. I don't know. Some people are, for example, upset by what's going on in the Middle East. Whether they're upset by how Hamas treated the Israelis, or how the Israelis are treating Gaza, or somewhere else. A few days ago we've had the Ukrainians bombing a square in Donetsk, shelling a square in Donetsk with cluster munitions and killing 25 people. It suggested it was just done out of sheer spite. There's something to get angry about. But, plenty of things to get angry about. And maybe that's how Mars on the Pluto North Node midpoint is going to work. You just turn on the news and you'll find something to get angry about. You'll see suffering in the news, people getting hurt, killed for no reason at all. And there's plenty of reason there to get angry. One final thing about Mars. Mars is conjunct a fixed star called Vega, and let me just go to Vivian Robson, see what he says about Vega and Mars being on Vega. So Vega is a pale sapphire star situated in the lower part of the lyre from Al-Waki, the falling, and known in the Middle Ages as a vulture cadens, the falling gripe or vulture, often incorrectly spelt Vega, V-E-G-A. So what Robson says about Mars being on Vega is scientific interests, unpopular opinions, moral courage, favourable for gain. So moral courage, with Mars on Vega, aspecting the Pluto node midpoint, it's seeing that something is wrong in society. Maybe it's our particular community, or it could be the other side of the world, and just getting angry about it and feeling one has to take a stand. So, what do you want to take a stand about? I'm not saying you should take a stand, but there may be an opportunity here for all of us to show some moral courage. Okay, so that is the broad picture today. I'm not saying that it's particularly dramatic. So I'm certainly not promising fireworks. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the astrology for today in terms of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So here are my forecasts for Wednesday, January the 24th, 2024. Aries, you are upset by quite a few things. You are impulsive, and when you look around you, you can see that the world is not perfect, and I've already suggested why. It's because Mars, your ruling planet, is conjunct the star Vega, and it's also on the Pluto node midpoint. So something that affects everyone affects you in particular. So Aries, you do have the capacity to be a crusader. You have the capacity to see that something is wrong and do something about it. And so you have to perhaps work out at what level you may want to work. It may be that you see an injustice, could be in your family, in your place of work, in your circle of friends. It could be something very local, but it could be something global. You could see something on the news and feel that you have some kind of responsibility to sort it out. But Aries, you do have to understand that you can't change the world on your own, and that you do have to think about practicality. And I think you're reminded of that by the simple fact that the moon is going through Cancer, and that position of a moon in Cancer will, to a great extent, ground you and remind you that before you worry about other people and their problems, even if these other people have quite very, very serious problems, that you do have to think about yourself, and you have to ground yourself, and you have to make sure that everything is secure. And once you've done that, you can start creating change. After all, the moon is sextile Uranus. So from the vantage point of your own space, you can actually take action to change the world perhaps in a very small way, but in a noticeable way. Now, if I want to be a little more sort of down to earth than that, it's not just about changing the world, political activism. You do have to think about yourself. From a financial perspective, I think there is good work to be done. I think that you might have some good ideas today, Aries. Ideas that in themselves are not dramatic, but if you put them into action, I think you will surprise people. And at the same time, I think that you yourself will see the benefits. Another point to make, Aries, is you shouldn't forget your dreams and your imagination, because your dreams are powerful. Your imagination is strong, and you can picture things, visualize things, almost in a sort of half-waking way. You get a sort of a feeling about something, which you have an opportunity to manifest. And maybe a dream, or even just a daydream, will tell you about which way you should be going next. Think it through. You don't want to do something dangerous or irresponsible on a whim because you've dreamt it. So you do have to be a little careful there. But I think that is perhaps a useful starting point. Finishing up with relationships, I wouldn't have expected dramatic things to happen, but I think that what partners, other people close to you, are really looking for, and something that you can provide actually, is security and grounding. You come over as being a reassuring person. So it's not just about your impulsiveness. Arians who want to make people feel comfortable, they really can do it. So perhaps you should work on that, because in one or two cases you can actually create real harmony. Taurus. it's another day when you can probably take it fairly easily. I mean, I don't think there's anything that absolutely needs to be done. I think, sort of compared with yesterday, there's less tension in the air. There has been some tension recently building up, and it has been a bit off-putting, but I think things are actually calmer. Now, that's not to say that you have to be boring. After all, the moon is sextile Uranus, and so you can communicate in quite an exciting in an exciting way, and other people are definitely going to pay attention to you. But you don't have to take any risks. You don't have to make wild promises. You don't have to make a fool of yourself. Just say what's on your mind. Try to be interesting, and it will work. And that's basically all you need do. I don't think there's much else to worry about. I think in terms of relationships, you may find that certain people are kind of putting a bit of pressure on you. They want you to do something. I think in certain situations they might want you to do something which you're just not interested in. It may be important to them, but it's not actually important to you. And so if you find yourself in that situation, where you're the one who's not excited about something, and you've got this person saying you've got to do it, no. You've got to hold your ground. I mean, be polite about it, but it's not a time to give in to pressure. Just make it clear that you're not in the mood for sort of manic activity. It doesn't matter how important it seems. Obviously, within reason. Okay, sometimes things really are important, but in most cases, you should probably stay where you are and not give in to outside pressure, and also don't give in to your own fantasies. So in terms of relationships, some Taurians might start having ideas about the ideal union, some fantasy union between you and another person. You're thinking this is the way it should be, and you may be really sure about that, but you have to remember it's just your idea. The other person may not see it like you see it. So if you do get ideas about what is an ideal relationship, the way relationships should be, I'm not convinced that you're gonna be able to actually realize these ideas, at least in the short term, because today I think there's a certain element of fantasy. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate it, but I think that element of fantasy is certainly there. Gemini. Gemini, I think your mind is going into doing some strange stuff. I mean, you're having some strange thoughts, thoughts which you probably don't want to share with other people. I'm speaking as a Gemini. Geminis have really strange thoughts. You absolutely would not want to share them, but it's thoughts that you find yourself thinking things which you're not entirely happy about. You might dwell on the sort of negative sides of life. You might be thinking about how dangerous the world is, how violent the world is. If you really think about it, you can see disintegration and perhaps criminality and just bad stuff. I mean, that's kind of how it works, how it feels. Um, so perhaps, Gemini, you shouldn't just not tell people what's on your mind, but perhaps you should find a way of sort of redirecting your mental energy. Um, try to get involved in something constructive, because I think in most cases your thoughts are just not very helpful. Unless you're a writer. I don't know if you're writing. I don't know, murder mysteries or whatever, then yeah, it's probably be a good day because your mind is coming up with that kind of stuff. But for most Geminis, I think a bit of mental discipline might be a good idea. But I suppose you are kind of in touch with some high-level ideas. Ideas that are fairly cosmic, and it's just you. You're having the ideas, and these ideas could be really interesting, and perhaps you should need to work out what they're about. You're starting to see the world in a different way, and you can see how strange things are. And yeah, if you kind of work on it, there may be something there which can help you make sense of your life, and really understand that nothing is quite as it seems. I mean, really, that's the main thing going on. I suppose I should say that in terms of money, there has been an emphasis on money in Gemini's life over the last couple of days, and I think if you work hard, you can actually get some great ideas. That is because the moon, which is moving through Cancer, is making a sextile to Uranus. So moon sextile Uranus can be about sudden ideas that might have an immediate bearing on your financial well-being. And so once you have those ideas, it'll be down to you to be able to sort out how you can actually take these ideas and put theory into practice. Cancer. The moon continues moving through your star sign. So I think today you're feeling comfortable. I think actually you're feeling more comfortable than yesterday. I think yesterday, although you were in a strong position, I think you were also aware that there were people you had to deal with, outside situations that weren't entirely to your taste. And I think that today you seem to have a lot more freedom, and you're in a position where you can increasingly make things happen. So if you're not satisfied with the way the world is going, particularly your little part of the world, then you can do something to sort of shake things up a bit. No one's going to get hurt, but you can just make a few changes, and I think it'll make everyone's life a lot better, and also I think a lot more exciting. In terms of relationships, I think that some of the people you have to deal with are very interested in the idea of relationships and how relationships best function. I think partners may have ideas about how best you should relate to them, and maybe they'll be expressing these ideas, and so you have to work out whether your partner's idea of a perfect relationship and your idea of a perfect relationship actually fits. Maybe they do fit together nicely, but not necessarily. So you have to work out what partners want, and that's not just in a romantic sense. in any one-to-one situation, consider, what does your partner want right now? What are they pushing for? Maybe they're pushing for something that is acceptable to you. Maybe they're pushing for something that you're not really interested in. But you do have to be very clear about your feelings. I should also point out, Cancer, that the moon is making a trine to Neptune. The moon is your ruling planet, so when the moon is trine Neptune, it is likely to have an impact on you. So I think that today, there is going to be a side to you that is quite sort of otherworldly, that is able to sort of move beyond physical barriers and boundaries, and is looking for something almost sort of spiritual and eternal. You want something to dissolve into, and of course you want something to dissolve into which is positive. The idea of dissolving into something might sound good, but it's not always good. Having an ego, being able to keep things together, is actually important. If we can't keep things together, well, you could say that's a recipe for madness. So perhaps you need to find something that you can safely dissolve into without compromising your individuality. And I know that's a contradiction, dissolving into something but also being an individual. But that's perhaps what you've got to do. And, it might be a good time, for example, to explore new ways of looking at the world, new religions, new spiritualities, and new philosophies. And I think by doing that, I think you can certainly make your life a lot more meaningful. Leo, you probably would like to give the world and its confusing inhabitants a miss. People are complicated, and I think, Leo, you are kind of realizing that, and you're also realizing that you don't really want to give too much away today. There are things that are yours, you regard them as being yours, and you want to keep them. And particularly, I'm thinking about your emotions. You've got your emotions, you feel a particular way about the world, and you don't want to compromise that. And, when dealing with people on a one-to-one level, I think it's going to be quite difficult, Leo, for you to be sort of open and emotionally flowing. Indeed, the closer you get to people, the more you might want to actually close up. It's okay. I mean, it's nothing to apologize about. It's just the way you are at the moment. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be isolated. Indeed, today there could be sudden contacts. You didn't mean to get in contact with someone. You didn't mean to get in contact with a group of people or perhaps some organization, but somehow it just happened. It's quite spontaneous. And your first instinct might be to say, no, this is not what you want. You did not want to get involved in this particular social situation. It's not you. You've got nothing to benefit. Get me out of here. That might be your first impulse. But perhaps you should think again. I think, when you do find that you have a genuinely surprising meeting, a genuinely surprising interaction with other people, while at first it might be disturbing, it's actually an opportunity. And so, you've got to use your imagination to work out exactly what this opportunity is. Virgo, it's a day which is, I think, going to be quite good. I think that you can interact quite well with other people, provided you don't allow your imagination to get the better of you. I think there is a certain amount of fear there. You're worried that if you do get heavily involved with other people, what is going to happen? Where is it going to take you? And yeah, you might have some really quite distressing ideas, like Gemini. I was talking about, a few signs back when I was talking about Gemini, I was saying that Gemini might be having these kind of issues, and I think Virgo might as well. And it's perhaps all about having an overactive imagination. So you do have to keep your imagination in check today, especially when you're dealing with other people, when you're in a sort of high-profile social situation. You can't be thinking and analysing all the time, because otherwise you'll just be ground to a standstill. I mean, of course, a bit of caution is always a good idea, but in general, just take every opportunity to meet people, because you might meet someone that you weren't expecting to meet, by surprise. That's because the moon, moving through a very sociable sector of your solar chart, is making a sextile to Uranus. A sudden meeting, a meeting with someone who is perhaps rather different from you, who brings sort of a new set of experiences and ideas, perhaps comes from a very different background, and I think it's a situation where you really can benefit. So Virgo, do try to be as open-minded as possible, because I think there are real opportunities here, and also you should allow things to take their course when you meet people. When you meet someone new, don't have a sort of a set deadline for something to happen, a set deadline to be amused. You have to allow any relationship, particularly if it's new, to develop. That means not sort of talking to someone for 1 minute, saying hello, goodbye, and all that kind of stuff. Allow every relationship to develop a little, so that you can get a feel for the person you're dealing with. Because once you've got a feel for the person you're dealing with, the person you're talking to, you might realize that this is someone you want to spend more time with, that it's someone you might want to get closer to as a friend, or they might be, or from a material point of view, it might be someone who could be useful. So give people a chance to really show you who they are. Libra, you still are in a situation where you will enjoy your own privacy, your own space. I think that's very clear. This is because Venus, your ruling planet, is in Capricorn. It's been in Capricorn since the weekend. But what you're doing, Libra, here is you are creating a good foundation for yourself, because if you want to make progress in the outside world, you do need that foundation, and I think that's what you're doing. Even if you're not thinking that you're doing that, that's what you're actually doing. Almost at an unconscious level, some part of you knows what you need, and you need a stable footing, and I think that you are definitely giving it to yourself, because it's like it's like a tree. It needs to put down roots in order to support all the foliage and the crown and the leaves. So it's kind of movement in two ways: downward movement, the root; the upward movement, meeting the outside world. And indeed, you can certainly benefit from meetings and interactions with the outside world. Particularly if they come out of nowhere, something you weren't planning for, weren't expecting, but you just have a meeting, and you just with someone, you just automatically know what's going on. You don't really have to think about it. Everything is natural. You don't have to plan. You don't have to pretend to be. You don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. And I think that's very reassuring. If you can be honest and true to yourself, then I think you'll find that in terms of the outside world, you'll get plenty of honesty back. Scorpio. I suppose I should say that Mars is your ruling planet. Mars is in an interesting condition right now. Yes, Mars is still in Capricorn, the sign of its exaltation. It's actually halfway through Capricorn. At noon New York time, it's 15 degrees 5 minutes Capricorn on Wednesday. So it's exactly halfway through. And Mars is conjunct the fixed star Vega. And I think that affects you. And I don't think it's a problem. I think that you are someone who is original, and you can stand out as someone who is very original. You're not going to follow the crowd, and you are not going to care who you offend. It really doesn't matter to you. You understand you can't be friends with everybody with Mars conjunct Vega. Some people like you, some people don't. If they don't like you, if they can't handle you, well, that's their problem, not yours. And I think that's okay. There's certainly no need to apologise about the situation. But Mars, as I've said earlier, Mars is aspecting the Pluto node midpoint. So Scorpio, if we put this all together, there are going to be things that make you annoyed, even angry. Things going on in the world. And this is something I said to Aries. I think it's something I said to all of you, everyone, whatever their sign. What happens in the world matters, and we're going to get angry about it, perhaps. But for you, Scorpio, I think it impacts you, in a very strong way, because it's your Mars, you're the ruler of your sign, aspecting the Pluto node midpoint on the star Vega. So you have to decide how far you go. You want to stand up for justice. That's actually quite a Scorpio trait. Scorpios don't like injustice. When they see injustice, many Scorpios will just get really mad about it. And so that might be an important theme for you today. And I think that's something you're going to want to communicate. So, when you're talking today, I don't think you're going to be particularly interested in small talk. No, not really. You're going to want to get straight down to business. It's just not in your psychological disposition at the moment to talk about petty garbage. You're going to want to hit the main issues, and I think that's fine. I think you'll be able to do so in a way that is very convincing, provided you know when to stop. It's just easy to get obsessed about something going on in the world, particularly now. I mean, I've noticed this. So many people have just sort of dropped everything and have followed a cause. And in many cases, it's kind of messed up their social life. It's confused their friends, upset their friends. So you have to decide how far you go. And I think, Scorpio, you have to recognize that not everyone is going to support what you believe, and you shouldn't really hold that against them. You should also consider the possibility, perhaps, dare I say, that you've got it wrong. Well, consider it. But it's maybe that something you're passionate about is really not worth getting passionate about. So yeah, you really should consider that. Now, in terms of relationships, it's actually quite possible that the people you have to deal with, the people you have to interact with on a one-to-one level, actually have quite high expectations. They expect something of you. They may even want some kind of commitment, commitment to be part of something, maybe to be part of their lives, part of their projects. And you have to decide whether that is appropriate. Scorpios really fight for their boundaries. Your boundaries are important. And so I think you have to work out how you're going to deal with that. Is it really what you want, to just do things someone else's way, to just accept someone else's view of a way people should, of a way you should relate to them? I don't know. You have to work that out. Though I should say that in any relationship, a Scorpio, you are the stronger party. I'm fairly confident about that, and you can do that simply by weighing up Venus and Mars. I mean, you are Mars. I know Mars is a male planet, but it can also represent you, regardless of gender, whether it's a male or a female Scorpio. Mars has a special connection with the sign Scorpio. And Mars is in a strong position. It's in a stronger position than Venus. So in any relationship, there's no reason to give too much away. You can be yourself, and in most cases, I think you can get your way. Sagittarius, it's not going to be a fantastically interesting day. I think that you're probably going to want to just relax a bit. Relax with your feelings. Your feelings are really strong at the moment with Moon in Cancer. You've got feelings about most things, and in some ways, if you get too close to other people, then emotions could get they could get a bit out of control. And so, what you need to do is you need to forestall this. You need to create an emotional environment for yourself, which is safe, which is emotionally safe, where you do have control. It shouldn't be too difficult, but you may have to do something ever so slightly dramatic to establish your boundaries. So, for example, if you're in a situation where you feel that someone is overstepping your boundaries, then a flash of anger could be very effective. You don't have to pursue it. Just a flash of anger, just a sign that you are displeased, could just solve the whole problem. And so, yeah, that's probably the main thing. The main thing to consider. I mean, I don't think there's too much else going on. I think you do. Yeah, I mean, I think you do have the capacity to make a powerful impression. Yes, it might be angry. It might be just a demonstration of power, a sudden demonstration of your power. When you suddenly demonstrate what you want, who you are, what you can do, and you do it, it can all happen in a few seconds. And you do that, and straight away, you're going to be taken seriously. And in terms of some of the people you're dealing with, some people might be giving the impression of being confused. They don't understand what's going on. They perhaps are deliberately stupid. But then you just have to repeat the performance. Maybe you have to repeat yourself once. Do it again. Show your feelings, show your passion, show some anger, and demonstrate your power. A second display of power should be enough to make it absolutely clear that you're in control, and that you are not going to tolerate certain behaviours. But I don't want to exaggerate things. I'm not actually saying that it's going to be, in all cases, a dramatic day. You can make it a dramatic day if anyone tries to cross your boundaries, but maybe that won't apply, in which case you can probably have a reasonably relaxing time. And yeah, tomorrow should be a lot more exciting. Capricorn. Well, like yesterday, the moon continues to move through Cancer, your opposite sign. Certain other people can't be avoided, but I think, unlike yesterday, it's probably going to be easier. I mean, I think yesterday, Tuesday, there was plenty of scope for getting involved in stupid arguments. There's plenty of scope for misunderstanding. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that you're better able to deal with the unexpected. And I think that through your own clear, thought out behaviour, you can establish control of the situation. And really, Capricorn, it might be a good idea to spring a few surprises. Maybe that's what certain relationships require, a bit of a surprise. I mean, after all, the moon, which is moving through Cancer, your opposite sign, as we know, it's making a sextile to Uranus. Moon sextile Uranus is about gentle surprises that don't cause any damage, and which nonetheless can improve things. So perhaps what certain relationships need is a sense of surprise, a sense of excitement. Maybe things have got a bit boring recently, and now with this moon sextile Uranus, you have a chance to lighten things up, spark things up, so that's something you might want to focus on. But there's also the question of how you communicate with people, how you communicate if you're in a one-to-one. How do you actually communicate? How do you tell someone what you want, and how do you tell someone what you don't want? How do you express your feelings? What do you have to do? Well, I think that with the moon trine Neptune, it's not really about the spoken word. The moon trine Neptune is about being able to communicate in a way that's actually quite non-verbal, that's quite sort of emotional, maybe even telepathic. or at least very focused on very small micro gestures which can say everything. So in terms of communicating and telling someone what you think and want, consider the possibility that you don't have to use words. Gestures, thoughts, feelings may be enough to create an excellent line of communication, and this line of communication can improve, whatever relationships you might be involved with. Aquarius. There are still, Aquarius, a few things that need to be done. You can do them quickly, but they do have to be done. And your view is going to be quite comprehensive. You will be able to see everything. You'll be able to see everything going on around you. And if there's something that's not right, you'll notice straight away. And this will give you an opportunity to just sort it out. And you possibly don't really have to make a fuss about it. You just take action. Something's in the wrong place, you make sure it's in the right place, and everything flows naturally. It all flows very naturally from there. But one thing that might not flow as naturally as you would like it to flow is close relationships. I don't know. I just think that the people close to you are not really going to be as sort of warm and fuzzy and welcoming as they usually are. It may feel as if there's something preoccupying them. They may even have a certain sense of cold aloofness, but you're an Aquarius. You understand these kind of things. I think you understand that people do go in phases. That sometimes people are aloof. People don't want to get close, and that's fine. I mean, it should be fine. You should understand that, and you should be able to recognize it. So, in terms of relationships, I'm not convinced that anything wonderful is going to happen, and really you just have to accept that, and give people the space to work through whatever they're trying to work through. It's not going to take long for them to work through, but it's just that right now you perhaps can't expect very much, and whatever thoughts you had about the way relationships should be, very interesting, but I would suggest that at least for today you shelve them. Your expectations about how other people should be behaving are meaningless. You're not really in a position to get people to behave in a particular way, so just accept that. And then there won't be any trouble. Things might appear a bit tedious, but just perhaps work on yourself, because I think there is work. Aquarius, there is work to do on yourself, on your own domain. Things you've been working on that perhaps only you understand. And if there's, for example, been a problem that you've been working on but you haven't actually fully understood, then actually today you can actually find the solution. So if you've been about to give up on something, a particular task, maybe a lonely task, and you've been about to give up on it, then actually suddenly things will start to make sense. Might come to you, sort of like a flash of inspiration. Pisces. I think Pisces, it's a good day. It's fairly interesting. There are plenty of things to amuse you. I don't think you're going to be bored. You're going to have a good sense of your own creativity. And I'm thinking, particularly if you're artistic creativity, you are quite artistic today, Pisces. Reason being is, Neptune is still in your star sign. Neptune's been in your star sign for ages, but it's still there. And the moon is making a trine to Neptune. The moon is also making a sextile to Uranus. So you've got a wonderful imagination, Pisces. You always have had a wonderful imagination. But today it's particularly wonderful, and I think that you can really create some amazing things. So, let your imagination wander. Give your imagination free rein. And allow your imagination to manifest. Good way to get it to manifest is make sure there's paper around, paper, pencils, paint, whatever you need. Okay, you might say, well, paper, that's very 20th century. It's all digital. No, I don't think digital's not going to be so good. The physical feel of paper and be able to communicate on paper today, I think Pisces, that's going to be important. And yeah, let your artistic talent, run riot. Don't think about it. Don't try too hard to be someone you're not, to create something that is not you. You've got to follow your heart, follow your creative instinct, you'll be amazed what you come up with. So yeah, if you're a Piscean artist, writer, poet, whatever, should be a really good day. And in terms of relationships, I think there's plenty of scope for optimism, but it's not a time to be making commitments. The various relationships you're in, their function for today should probably be to give yourself sort of enjoyment and some fun, and to be an outlet for your creativity. Don't think too much, but don't think about what the relationship is going to be like in a year's time, 10 years time, whatever. Is think about today. Think in think in terms of the present, live for the moment, and provided you're being creative and artistic, and provided the people around you are helping you be artistic and creative, then that's great. If they're not helping you be artistic or creative, if they're criticizing you, if they're suggesting that what you're doing isn't up to standard, well, then you know that that kind of person is not really what you need at the moment. But I'm confident you're going to find some fun people to be with today, and things look good. Okay, those are the 12 signs, and now I want to look at the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those who are watching this video, for watching this particular section of the video relating to the I Ching. And I threw 3 coins 6 times, and the first hexagram I threw was hexagram number 53, which is development. Overall, it's a pretty fortunate hexagram, and it shows the path of development from the beginning, the inception of a development, right through to the end. You can almost see this in a sort of in a whole lifetime's way, and I think this is particularly the case with this hexagram, because we've got 3 moving lines. The first line, the bottom line, moves. The second from the bottom line moves, and the top line moves. So the bottom line is about developing something from a position of a certain weakness. It's like the image of a child or a teenager just setting out on a journey they are developing, or it could be about a bird. Birds are very important in this hexagram. It's about birds starting to fly and moving higher and higher and finding different places to nest. So at the beginning of the movement, the child, the teenager, the very young man is at a disadvantage because he or she doesn't really understand the ropes. And so maybe you're involved with something here, but you don't really understand it. You're vulnerable because you're so new here. It's not about your age. It's about how familiar you are. And because you don't fully understand the ropes, you might be vulnerable. So you need to take it very seriously, and you shouldn't run too fast. Then we move to the second line from the bottom, where you're starting to get the hang of it. You're starting to be able to move forward. You're feeling more confident. And then you're flying. The development, you can develop very, very quickly. Then you move to the top line. The top line is actually pretty cosmic. It's almost connected with death. I mean, I don't mean death in a negative sense of death. It's like, it talks about the wild goose. It flies higher and higher and higher, and it leaves the world behind, and all we have left is a couple of feathers. The goose is gone, we're left with feathers, and we can use these feathers to make, I don't know, a sacrificial headdress, or we can, I don't know, whatever we want to do with feathers, but it's all pretty superficial because the goose itself is gone. And this is a point of completion where the work is done. And so the work is done. We've created something brilliant. It's a great example for the rest of humanity or our family, our friends and whatever, and we can start to move on. All in a day. This hexagram is for one day. So you've got to bear that in mind. I mean, it sounds wonderfully cosmic, but tomorrow when I do the hexagram for Thursday, it'll probably be something, it'll almost certainly be something different. And this hexagram development, it does move. It moves because we've got 3 lines moving. It moves to hexagram number 5, which is waiting. Waiting for action. And in fact, although it's waiting, it's waiting in the sense that, okay, we're sure that whatever we're waiting for, it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. And it's nice to be confident. But there's a danger that we wait for too long. Because at some stage, we're going to have to move. We're going to have to take the initiative. It has to happen. So you can't hang around forever. So having developed something, it's reached completion, you've done your work on it, you're now moving on, and you're ready to move to the next stage. And you can't hang around here forever. You've got to make the big move. You've got to take the initiative in a particular way. You know what it is. Look at your situation. What is that thing you have to do? In fact, you have to, it's almost like crossing a river. And at some stage you've got to, I don't mean literally crossing a river. Don't go swimming rivers, but, metaphorically. You've got to get into the river. It's going to be cold. Please, don't go into rivers literally. But that is the action. That first, taking that initiative is going to be perhaps a bit painful and uncomfortable to begin with, but it has to be done. But I think you know what it is. And if you do what's expected of you, then I think the day overall looks pretty good. Okay, so now I'm done with the I Ching. I can look at Nikki Haley's chart. So here is Nikki Haley's chart. Now, I have looked at her chart before on several occasions. I never really made a great deal of progress with her chart. I don't think, because I think the problem with Nikki Haley is that we don't have a time of birth, or rather, I don't have a time of birth. I've just gone for noon, January the 20th, 1972. So I don't even know what her sun sign is. You can see at noon in Bamberg, South Carolina, on January the 20th, 1972, she had her sun at 29:45 Capricorn. So she's probably a Capricorn, unless she was born after around 6 p.m., in which case she's an Aquarius. So I suppose there's a 75% chance of her being a Capricorn, but we don't know for sure. And we can look at this chart in different ways. We can look at it in terms of her as a politician. We can also look at it in terms of these allegations that she may or may not have had affairs in, 2007, 2008, something like that. Now, she has denied it, and one should probably take her denials at face value. If she's denied it, I mean, why should we not believe her? But still, these are just allegations, and so we can still look at them, look at these allegations to see whether or not they make sense in terms of her chart. Now, there are a couple of things in this chart which stand out. She's got Mars opposition Uranus. Now, thing about Mars opposition Uranus, to be honest, that terrifies me, Mars opposition Uranus, because she wants to be president. She actually wants to be president of the US, and she's got Mars opposition Uranus. I think that is a problem because Mars opposition Uranus is accident prone. She could get herself into things which are difficult to get out of. And of course, if she's president of the United States, that could be like conflict. Remembering that Uranus is strongly configured in the chart of the USA. There's the American chart. You can see that in the US chart, there's Mars-Uranus conjunction in the seventh house. So it's kind of worrying that you might have someone as president who has Mars opposition Uranus. And as we know, from what she's been saying, she's a neocon. She wants to get America involved with more wars. She wants to continue with with whatever's going on in Ukraine, with the Middle East. She's very gung-ho on this. And I think that is reflected by her Mars opposition Uranus. So that's one thing to be said. Now, I did say that she might be a safe pair of hands. Did I really say that? I don't know really if that's really the case. Yes, she's a Capricorn, probably a Capricorn. There's a 75% chance of her being a Capricorn. Is she a typical Capricorn? I don't really know enough about her. But when you're dealing with a female chart, you should probably look at the moon more than the sun. The sun in Capricorn may represent her as a younger woman. She may be more that moon in Pisces. I think, okay, there's a small chance her moon is actually in Aries if she was born very late in the day, but she's probably got moon in Pisces. Moon in Pisces, yes, she can be very sensitive to what's going on in her country, what's going on in her community. That's true. For a politician, that can be useful. Politicians have to have their finger on the pulse. And I think the general consensus was, when she was under Trump, she was the UN, she was American ambassador to the UN. I think the consensus was, politics aside, that she did a reasonably good job. But if you remember, she left. She didn't see it through, and she didn't see it through, did she? She resigned as I can't remember when precisely she resigned as American ambassador to the UN, but she was it a year or two before the election? It was as if that moon in Pisces felt that something might go wrong and she didn't want to be around, perhaps, to take the flak. Maybe she had an intuition that something would be going on with Trump. Maybe she didn't want to have it. Maybe she thought it would all end like the Capitol siege or whatever it was. But certainly her intuition told her to get out. I don't know whether that was the right thing to do. Maybe that intuition was wrong. So in a way, she was probably thinking that she was going to leave early, so she wasn't going to get. She probably thought that her reputation would be damaged by whatever Trump would do, perhaps, and so it was perhaps a careful calculation. So you could see that sun in Capricorn and moon in Pisces. Moon in Pisces, slippery Pisces. Pisces, wants to maneuver themselves to take advantage of this situation, but to dodge a bullet in another situation. That might be sort of moon in Pisces. We also shouldn't forget that she has Mercury in Capricorn. I think Mercury in Capricorn is a pretty good. It's a pretty good place for Mercury in Capricorn. It's sensible. She's got a reasonably good mind. She's not going to do anything crazy. She's not going to rock the boat. So hence, I suppose you could say Sun and Mercury in Capricorn is a safe pair of hands, but then you've got to consider that Mars opposition Uranus. Now, looking at this chart and remembering we do not have a time of birth, is there any capacity here for having extramarital affairs? Potential. I'm absolutely. We don't know what happened. Well, I would have said it's interesting that she has got Venus square Neptune. So Venus is a planet of relationships, and Neptune can get a bit confused. Boundaries can get frayed. So with Venus square Neptune, I can imagine someone having Venus square Neptune sort of getting involved in an affair without really thinking about it. It just happens. Because Venus gets confused. Venus. It's well placed. She's got Venus in Pisces. It's a very nice place for Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces. I would guess that when she wants to be, she can be very sympathetic and friendly and emotional. That's Venus in Pisces. That's perhaps not what ordinary people see. We just see this Capricorn woman who's a politician and she just wants to be elected president. But perhaps we don't always see the Venus in Pisces. Maybe you see it if you're in South Carolina, but I don't really see it. But it's there. But that Venus in Pisces is square Neptune, and that does create some confusion. Is that the kind of confusion that could perhaps lead to affairs? Perhaps, possibly. So that's the first point to make. The second point to make relates to the Jupiter. She's got Jupiter in Sagittarius. Jupiter is in its own sign in Sagittarius. It's strongly placed. Jupiter. Can Jupiter be promiscuous? Well, if you go from a mythological perspective, yes. I mean, Jupiter is. You think about Jupiter. If you go to the Roman mythology of Jupiter or the Greek equivalent Zeus, Zeus has all sorts of antics, and so maybe a strong Jupiter might encourage a sort of female version of that. And then we look at Venus and Mars. Venus and Mars are the two planets of sexuality. Venus is about female sexuality, Mars is about male sexuality. We notice that the Venus-Mars midpoint is at 2537 Pisces. So it's about here. It looks as if the moon is conjunct the Venus-Mars midpoint, but really we don't know where the moon is. And we use quite tight orbs, ideally about 1 degree. But Jupiter is square the Venus-Mars midpoint. And so someone with Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint, they could be charismatic. We had... yesterday I talked about Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis had Jupiter aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. Now, when I described that in terms of his charisma and his attractiveness. I'm not saying he is attractive, but from a perspective of Florida voters, or enough Florida voters to elect him governor, he would appear attractive, and that's how his Jupiter, as far as I know, that's how his Jupiter aspecting a Venus-Mars midpoint actually works. Sorry, I should actually go and just remind ourselves of Ron DeSantis's chart. There is Ron DeSantis's chart, by the way. Sorry, that's his. We don't know his time of birth. As with Nikki Haley, we don't know the time of birth. At least I don't know the time of birth. There is the Venus-Mars midpoint, and Jupiter. In fact, he's got his Jupiter square his Venus-Mars midpoint. Nikki Haley has also got Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint. So it does seem, in terms of this election cycle, that having Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint can help. And these are two people who are governors or former governors, and that really does help them in their political career. It makes them attractive. It makes them able to push out their attractiveness onto their electorate. Yet we could take Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint literally and say there is maybe a strong sexual appetite, because Venus and Mars can literally be about sex. And so Jupiter square Venus-Mars midpoint. Nikki Haley has got Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint. She's got sexual needs, and that's how you might go and interpret that Jupiter on the square of a Venus-Mars midpoint, and then you take it back to that question: did she or did she not have these affairs just before she became governor of South Carolina? So those are a few points about her chart. I should before I do that, I just quickly want to compare her chart with that of the United States. You know, if you want to be president of the United States, it does help if you've got good connections with the country you want to be president of. So we'll put United States in. Okay, so how does Nikki Haley occur to the United States? I'm not entirely convinced about this, to be honest. You can see that there is the United States' Sun at 13 Cancer, and her Mars is at 16 Aries. That's a bit of a problem. It may be that the way she asserts herself, the American public may find that as being a bit pushy. Something might grate. More importantly, this moon square Saturn. So Nikki Haley has got her Saturn at 2941 Taurus, and the American moon, the United States Declaration of Independence, July the 4th, 1776, is at 27 Aquarius. So her Saturn is square the United States' moon. I don't know. I think the American people are going to find her just a bit too much, a bit too heavy, perhaps a bit too controlling, something like that. So I think that could be a problem. You know, look at George Bush Jr. He was born on July the 6th, 1946. So his son was at 13, 14 Cancer, exactly on the United States' sun. So that really made it easy for him to be elected president. With Nikki Haley, we don't have these kinds of connection. And I think look at her son at 2945 is sort of making a semi-sextile-ish aspect to the Americans' people's moon. So I mean, overall, I think there's a lack of connection there, I would have said. And look at her son. Yeah, her son at 29 Capricorn is opposition the United States Mercury at 24 Cancer. I think overall she grates. And so I think this, might make it a problem. It might be a problem for her to become president. And maybe we're seeing this in terms of her trying to get the Republican nomination, a subset of the American people. I suppose those who are registered Republicans or whatever. It doesn't quite gel there. And I think this is shown by her chart, by her link with the United States. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to look at what was going on in her chart in terms of the beginning of 2007. So according to that affidavit, this affair started at the beginning of 1987. Now, I don't know when. 2007. Now, I don't know when that was. I have set up a chart for April the 1st, 2007. Now, forget all the inner planets. I'm only interested in outer planets here. And I just want to compare, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, with this. So these are positions of planets April the 1st in 2007. What I notice is Pluto. Now, Pluto is conjunct Jupiter. So Pluto, April the 1st, 2007, was sort of 2 degrees beyond Jupiter. So we get the idea of something having happened. And in fact, I believe in November 2006, Pluto was conjunct Jupiter and was therefore square her Venus-Mars midpoint. So it may not be what Pluto was doing in 2007, but more what Pluto was doing in 2006. Pluto potentially, remember, we don't know what happened, but Pluto could have been stirring up her sexual desires, moving her into perhaps a state where she might have been tempted to have affairs, perhaps. We don't know what kind of transformation, realizations Pluto was causing in 2006. So that's something interesting that with that Pluto that we should perhaps be aware of. So I don't know what kind of year 2006 was like for her, but yeah, certainly Pluto was on her Jupiter. So if Pluto's on your Jupiter, that means there's great pressure to make things better, to improve things. Things aren't good enough. You want to make things better. And then Pluto is on her Venus-Mars midpoint. So she wants more Jupiter on the Venus-Mars midpoint. That's one interpretation. It could be quite obsessive. That's a possible interpretation. Then we've got her solar arc direction. So solar arc directions is when you move everything 1 degree for 1 year. So the solar arc. So we would look at the solar arc directions for again for April the 1st, 2007, where the planets were. If you move everything 1 degree for 1 year, and we'd have to remember we do not have a time of birth for Nikki Haley. So this is kind of approximate. So there is Nikki Haley's chart in the middle, and there's her solar arc directions on the outside. And we can see that solar arc directed the sun, the solar arc directed the sun was at 524 Pisces. In other words, it had just crossed her Venus. And because it had just crossed her Venus, it had squared her Neptune. So the sun, probably at the end of 2006, was making the exact conjunction with Venus and was making the square with Neptune. So the sun was really triggering that Venus square Neptune. So remember, what I was saying about Venus square Neptune. Venus is about how people relate. Neptune can be about boundaries, getting sort of a bit confused. And so the sun coming onto that Venus square Neptune. Remember, the sun is also a male planet. So there could have been confused boundaries, and that could have been going on in terms of true solar arc directions. Now, probably, if you've been working with progressions, if any of you watching this have been, you'd probably be more likely to have used secondary progressions rather than solar arc directions. So that means, for 2007, how old would she be? It's 772, she'd be about 35 years old. Is that right? Something like that. So with solar arc directions, you're moving every single planet 1 degree per year. You're moving everything 35 degrees. If you are using secondaries, what you're doing is you're following the ephemeris. So you look, if someone's 35 years old, you look at what the planets would be at naturally 35 days after she was born. So looking at her secondaries, her secondary progressions, these are her secondary progressions for April the 1st, 2007. And there's something really interesting here. Now, remember, I was talking about the fact that she had Mars opposition Uranus. This is quite an impulsive, dangerous thing. Obviously, I was more concerned about Mars opposition Uranus and America getting into a war with Russia or whatever. But maybe it's more personal from that. It is so interesting that secondary progress Venus was conjunct her Mars. In fact, this conjunction, I think, would have probably happened a year before in 2006. So again, what was going on in 2006? And so Venus conjunct Mars. I mean, secondary progressed Venus conjunct natal Mars is a natural sextile combination. It can very well be about sexual activity. And she has, Mars opposition Uranus, and Venus, progressed Venus conjunct her Mars opposition Uranus, and I think that would have been exact 2006 rather than 2007. So could someone have an affair with secondary progressed Venus conjunct their Mars opposition Uranus? I suppose it's possible. Of course, we don't know. And another thing to bear in mind is the solar return. The solar return for 2007. So I'm assuming this would be if the affidavit was true. We don't know whether the affidavit is true. So what was going on? Her solar return for 2007. And when you look at this solar return, remember, in her natal chart, she's got a Venus-Neptune square. So looking at the solar return, there's her solar return for January the 20th, 2007. And we can see that Venus is conjunct Neptune. We get a Venus-Neptune signature, and she's got Venus-Neptune in her natal chart. So we kind of get a bit of a signature there. And if you look at Saturn, Saturn is at 23 Leo, and Venus is making an opposition to Saturn. Now, Venus opposition Saturn actually can be linked with having affairs. Now, that might sound surprising, but if you think about it, Saturn is thinking about the action. It's very sort of objectified. And so Venus opposition Saturn would fit. And then you throw in Neptune there as well. So the solar return doesn't contradict the idea of perhaps someone having affairs at that particular time. So I think the solar return maybe is not, it doesn't particularly contradict it. I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm just looking at the astrology here. I'm just speculating. One other thing about remembering this Venus-Saturn, I don't have a time of birth for Nikki Haley. And so what I have been doing a bit recently is I've been looking at the chart for the new moon just before she was born. This is a new moon just before she was born, and I'm kind of suggesting maybe the new moon just before she was born says something about who she is. It just sets her up, particularly as Nikki Haley is an important person. This is a person who would become, she's born in Bamberg, South Carolina. This is a person who at some stage was going to become governor of the state she was born in. So this is an important moment in the history of South Carolina, when it's the new moon before a governor is born. Birth of a governor is foretold by this new moon. And there's a new moon at 25 Capricorn on January the 16th, 1972, which will be about 4 days before she was born. Venus is at 2947 Aquarius. Saturn is at 2947 Taurus. So at the time of this new moon, there was a Venus-Saturn square. And, of course, we had a Venus-Saturn opposition in the solar return. And so the new moon perhaps suggests that there's promiscuity in that new moon on the basis of that Venus square Saturn, you could argue. And notice that in this new moon chart, 4 days before she was born, that Uranus is exactly on the midheaven. Midheaven can be connected with leadership. It can be connected with some surprise, some sort of earthquake-like event. And Uranus is on the midheaven, and Mars is pretty close to the IC. So this Mars-Uranus opposition was in Nikki Haley's chart when she was born on the 20th is very much involved in the new moon. That may hint to the future. Maybe she's going to go further from being governor of South Carolina. Maybe this is the new moon before the birth of a US vice president or president. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm not at the moment speculating whether or not Nikki Haley will ever be president. I mean, she's relatively young. But yeah, it's quite a strong prenatal new moon chart. Okay, I should now turn to the New Hampshire primaries. So I've got the chart here, which is for the results, I believe. I think it's been said that the results of the New Hampshire primaries will come at around 8 p.m. On Tuesday. So again, this video is for Wednesday, but by the time if you watch this video on Wednesday, the results will already be out. So let's see how this timing of a result actually hits Nikki Haley. So Nikki Haley's chart is in the middle, and opposition that is the positions of the planets at the time when the results supposedly come out. And you can see that she's got a Mercury return. So Mercury is exactly conjunct her Mercury at the time these results come out. I think that's probably the main aspect. There's Moon here. The Moon is opposition Mercury. And so the Moon is opposition Mercury in the sky when the results come out, and it does hit her Mercury. So I suppose, in one sense, that's a realization, but it may actually be sort of quite fortunate, not necessarily in terms of her winning, but rather, what she says at the time. I think that for Nikki Haley, Mercury is the planet of communication. And so the things she says when the results come out are going to be really important in terms of her political career. So it's not the results that matter. It's probably her immediate response to the results. And I should say that this primary has happened just after Pluto has crossed her Sun. So last weekend there was a conjunction between the Sun and Pluto right on her Sun. So, I mean, I wonder what that weekend was like. I mean, I speculated this before when I did look at her chart a couple of weeks ago. I said, what was it like? And really that's possibly what it's all about. She's got Pluto on her sun, and she will have Pluto on her sun again towards the end of the year. So this is a time of transformation for her. I don't know whether it's going to be comfortable. We should also remember that the sun in a female chart represents men, represents what's going on in the lives of the men in her life. And so Pluto is on the sun. There is drama, someone under pressure, perhaps, there's something going on in her personal life that is hinted at by transiting Pluto on her sun. I think that's absolutely possible. We may never know what it is, but it's probably going to be quite a theme for this year, with Pluto. Because Pluto goes retrograde again, it will go back onto her sun temporarily in I think the autumn, before finally Pluto goes back into Aquarius on November the 19th. So that's a New Hampshire primary. I just don't think we can expect anything too dramatic, because I think by and large everyone seems to know what's going to happen. Though one transit she has got is Neptune. Now remember, Neptune is at 2533 Pisces, and her Venus-Mars midpoint is at 2537 Pisces. So she's actually got Neptune on her Venus-Mars midpoint right now. I don't know what that means. Venus-Mars potentially is about sexuality. It's about how she expresses herself, her charisma. Neptune does create a bit of confusion. Maybe the Neptune on the Venus-Mars is reflecting the fact that this story about what was, these affidavits and this story about her supposed affairs. We don't know we have no idea whether or not they happened. She has denied it. I think there's a case for taking her denials at face value. Why would she not deny if it's happened? Why it seems not a very, very sensible thing to do to deny it. Maybe, but anyway, Neptune on her Venus-Mars midpoint. Perhaps that reflects the fact that in the run-up to the primary, these stories have come into the public eye again. I think the Daily Mail had a story about it I think it was published just a few days ago. So it's all come up again, and so perhaps this is Neptune transiting her Venus-Mars midpoint. I don't think there's any real point in looking at Donald Trump and how he is impacted by the primary, but I suppose I should look. Okay, this is Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, and I'm sure that some people are thinking that Nikki Haley might be a potential vice president or at least a vice presidential candidate for Donald Trump. I think there are certainly issues here. You can see that Nikki Haley's Donald Trump is in the middle. You can see Donald Trump has got his Mercury at 8 Cancer. She's got her Mercury at 12 Capricorn. So Mercury opposition Mercury. The way each other communicates may clash a bit, although we shouldn't forget that she was Donald Trump's pick to be US ambassador to the United Nations. I believe when she resigned, it happened, as far as I know, it was quite amicable. I think they got on okay during that time when she was ambassador. So just because the Mercury's are opposition Mercury's doesn't mean there's a disaster. But if she were to be vice presidential pick, that might become more of an issue. you can also see that her sun at 29 Capricorn, I suppose it could be an Aquarius, is opposition his Venus. Again, that's not entirely happy. There could be a bit of a clash there. So the question is, do they really get on enough? I mean, I think they've got two very different charts, although you could say, well, if they've got different charts, that's what you want from a president and a vice president. And what I'm basically saying is, on just by looking at this, remembering that Nikki Haley, we don't have a time of birth. I can't really say whether or not he's going to pick her. I'd have to do a horary chart to answer that question. And I think, as I said, she's got Mercury conjunct Mercury when the results come out in the New Hampshire primary. And so I think what she says is going to be very important. Is she going to say something to suggest that maybe she'd like to be picked, or is she going to make it clear that that's not what she wants? I mean, isn't that how American politics works? Of course, this is just one primary. It may be that Nikki Haley is going to want to carry on. I don't know how far, I don't know at what stage she would give up, but she may just carry on, in which case she's perhaps going to continue being negative about him. So yeah, what she says is really going to be very important. One other point, something I did forget to say, is that going back to Nikki Haley's chart, at the moment, it's beginning to pass now, but she has got Venus at 459 Pisces. In other words, Saturn has just gone over her Venus. So there's evidence that she's under a lot of pressure here, or has been under pressure, but may not just be related to her political campaign. She's had Neptune squaring her Venus-Mars midpoint. She's had Pluto on her Sun. She's had the Sun-Pluto conjunction on her Sun. And she's had Saturn conjunct her Venus. So whatever we see in public, I think in private, we may be seeing someone who is under actually quite a lot of pressure. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on Nikki Haley. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be more precise, but in terms of talking about this allegation about the supposed affairs, and even though we've got affidavits, what I was trying to do was sort of demonstrate how perhaps one can use astrology maybe to investigate whether or not an allegation is plausible or not. So I've shown you some evidence, and I'm not telling you what to think. I'm just showing you how one might have gone about it, how one might go about it astrologically. But you do have to remember that we are completely hampered by the fact that we do not have her time of birth, or at least I don't have her time of birth. Maybe the time of birth is freely available and I just haven't bothered to look, and if I'd looked harder I would have found it. But anyway, without time of birth, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be precise. Okay, thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, I would be grateful if you liked it. If you enjoyed the video, you found it useful and you're not subscribed, then I would be grateful if you subscribed. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.